In Italy, performing baptisms, we retained always this rite of the epitha. The senses are opened. This is the passive command of pathach in Hebrew, to open, be opened. And there is a whole spirituality in that one word. Yesterday, by chance, as often happens, I had a house full of travelling people, actually twice over in the day, but I noticed that while trying to keep some of the little people calm with a little telly video, I noticed something which was actually of interest. The capacity of a child actually to sit still. It has diminished quite a lot in our generation. There was one exception, and that was one little child who was especially spiritual. I've noticed that as he's growing in this little family. But I noticed the others, one for instance, a little teenager who preferred to play at that time with her own video game. And if you look around, that's what is actually happening. A lot of the young people of today, and not just young people, are in a bubble. When you're with them, they're not with you. They're isolated in front of this thing which they're carrying, which is more important, this virtual reality, than the reality round about them. And it's not just children. Look at your own behavior. Now, I've noticed, just observing life, because it's only fairly recent, this development in human behavior, because they weren't accessible to us before, that actually we are being profoundly damaged and harmed, all of us who are involved with certain gadgets. Now, is it true, yes or no, that a screen is very interesting? Is it true, yes or no, that a screen is more interesting than a book? Is it true, yes or no, that a screen is more interesting than prayer? What happens? 5 minutes for a search becomes an hour, and something else is gone. And by the end of that hour, we have become somewhat zombified. The pores of our soul have been obtruded. Epitha is very important for our day. I make a jump. If one talks to people in modern spirituality, they talk about opening up things, but what do they put in that space? Even in holy circles now, you'll get people, respectable people, putting in the word, yes, chakra, in this opening up of the soul. Opening up the pores of the soul, the chakras of the soul, which is a word from another spirituality, indeed another religion. You know exactly what I mean. And a lot of the people, even holy people coming to me, have been involved with all this. And it has to be broken. I mean broken. Because all these openings of the pores of our being through all these New Age practices are taken seriously by the one who's pushing them. You know who I mean? He's not shy to get a foothold in the door. And once he's got there, then he's got a bit of that soul. Things start going wrong. Now, compare this with the solid, strong message that we've got from St. Paul. He sums up here in a primitive form of the creed what our faith is about. It is the proclamation, the preaching. Kerisso in Greek is to preach, to proclaim. A herald is one who does it. And what he does is the kerygma. And this was the essence, the bomb that went around the Mediterranean world in those years after the resurrection. He's risen! It all hinges on that, the explosion. And of course that was the stumbling block against the Jews and of course against the wise Athenians. They heard until that point. Now, I want to remain with you for a second at one phrase that St. Paul uses in this reading that we had. He uses the ancient word kephas, cephas, showing that he's actually using the language still used amongst the early brethren. See first, of course, the name the Lord used and gave for Peter. Peter is already a stage after. It comes into our languages as Peter, but the Semitic root is rock kephas. A proof that the Lord gave that name and meant what he said by changing the name. Therefore, the Petrine authority is from the beginning. He goes then into these wider circles, ending with more than 500 brethren, most of whom he says are still alive, and then what he says, though some have fallen asleep. Some have fallen asleep. I just want to pause on that one word, because it gives us the word cemetery. The koimeterion is the place where people are doing that. They are resting, they are sleeping. This morning, on the way back from confession, I did my penance actually in the koimeterion, which is just in front of my house. It's the old abbey of Dulic. And you've got the abbey in the midst, of course. And you can go in there, and you can pray through those eastern windows, no glass, the windows are still there, facing the rising sun, as they always did. And there I thought on the horizon that my eyes cannot see, all these resting, because we just buried a close friend this last week, who helped me to set up the hermitage actually. What it means to close one's eyes in sleep. One thing unexpectedly hit me as I made that small meditation in the midst of the graves this morning, which I would like to leave with you too, because it's your business. It's when we have gone, will we have done what we were meant to do? Will we have used, as the Lord wanted, these gifts of irrepeatable seconds that chime only once in all eternity? And if not, why not, and what must I change? The pavement to hell is strewn with good resolutions. Tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow. But my friends, tomorrow never existed. When one hears news that such and such was killed in an accident, then one realizes what tomorrow is not about. One realizes too, because it can happen to us, is it not true, through someone else's fault in the car, that we're very close to those doors of eternity. Just like that. Now, I've read many, many testimonies of things happening at that point. For good and for bad, that point comes to us all. I'll just give you one, which will help you perhaps to say what I'm saying. Some of you have heard this before, about 5 years ago, but I'll say it again for those who haven't. Some clergy and some ministers are very much aware of the importance of being there when a soul is at that door. It could be your case as well, by the way. There was, about a century ago, a very devoted minister of souls in the London area who did all he could always to pray with someone who was leaving this world. His name was Henry Drummond, a great Baptist preacher as it happens, but before the Lord he was doing what he could to work with the Lord to apply the blood of Christ to these souls in danger. One day he found himself to a back street in London, where he knew that somebody was petering out. In those days, people knew what was what, even though they sinned, but they knew what sin was. And he was nearly delirious at his deathbed. I'm a black sheep. I've squandered my life. Drink and all that goes with it. He could not be calmed. he was out of his mind. Eventually, the good preacher talked to him until he calmed down a little, enough perhaps to get through and to have some prayer which could change eternity. And he put this question to him, which in the last analysis is the question that comes to us all, because it touches what we call the fundamental option, the yes or no, which right now we're making to our Creator. And he said to him, my brother, right now you know where you stand. Will you give your life to your Redeemer? And there was a pause. And some pauses contain all eternity. The seconds are very weighty. All is between one tick and another forevermore. As in that graveyard, if one opens the lid of those graves, the pendulum is going from side to side in each case, forever and ever and ever and ever, or never, 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 never. So this pause contained all that. And eventually the answer came, no! I will not give the dog end of my life to my God. A few minutes later, he was facing all eternity, with the words ringing in the air. Right now, we still have time, and some moments orientate all other moments to come. I just leave you with one moment which was very important some years ago, which made possible this moment right now, and every other moment that will come. It was the saying yes in Italy. The big day is when you say yes forever, and you can't take it back, and you sign away your life on the high altar. And I remember crying in peace when I heard the word in French, vous avez été accepté. You have been accepted. Because again, men can control men for other men for all eternity. But the brethren said yes, and in so doing, opened up all the doors, including this one now. And if it be God's will, the glory that we help each other to gain for all eternity. So this is the door that opened at that point. And by the way, Eddie Stones in prayer had seen it before I went there. He saw a big black cross. He could see a big black cross, no suffering ahead. It was an island at the time. But he could see a door opening, and this was the door he saw, the monastery in Italy. Sant'Antimo, which they were opening from France, an old monastery, one of the most beautiful in Italy. And also, he saw more than once, when praying over me in subsequent years, something else, which is quite curious, which he couldn't understand at the time, neither could I. He could see me sitting with lots and lots and lots of people listening to teaching. Isn't it strange that all that can be done without noise, just through going down a screen and a tube and touching even people at a distance? For grace, even going through the YouTube, lives again and can change eternity.
To lie in the soft brown earth, with the grasses waving above one's head, and listen to silence, to have no yesterday and no tomorrow, to forget time, to forgive life, to be at peace. Oscar Wilde. Vous avez été accepté à l'unanimité. Lines written after being accepted for perpetual vows at the Abbey of Sant'Antimo in 1996. O joy on earth, O joy yet in the world, to know that I am thine, and thine shall be, and thine alone, and by a little word upon this altar placed, eternally to this thy temple joined, to know that now no man or angel fiend can mar the road trod here by friends now crowned, that once did bow here where I place my head, to see the cloud of witnesses unseen walk calmly by, and chuckle at an aeon, to see all melt in a moment felt, nay, and to cry a tear of blissful peace. This is to call from out of the abyss of failure vast, and clutch at but a notch of grace at last.